Yes, my name is Douglas Stream, and I'll be talking today on how to get started with family history research.
Zoom in.
I'm curious, how many of you have already started to work on your genealogy? At least a few. So some of what I have to share with you won't be all that new. But anyway, this is only the second time in 46 years I've given a talk on this subject. So I probably learned as much as you will in the preparation for it. A lot of things have changed since 1978, especially with regard to the effect that computers have had on genealogical research. A little bit of background on myself. I was born and raised in central Iowa, and our family moved to Mason City in 1969, and I graduated from University of Northern Iowa 10 years later with a degree in business. Enlisted in the Army 3 years later, three and a half year enlistment, and then I spent 5 years working for the National Security Agency after that, and then finally settled in Montana in 1991, where I was to spend the next 30 years of my life. And then 2007, I married my hometown soulmate, and when we retired 4 years ago, we moved back here to Bellevue to be closer to the family. But anyway, let's get on with the... Oh, and it'd probably be best to hold your questions until I'm finished, because we've got quite a lot of material to cover. This photograph here was taken in the fall of 1975 on our family farm in Greene County, Iowa. Of course, that's me on the right, grandfather in the middle, and my father on the left. This was about 2 years before we started.
Okay.
My dad and I started our research. I thought it might be appropriate to put out a definition of genealogy. It's the study, research, and recording of family history involving the tracing of lineage, descent, and relationships across generations. This image here is almost become a universal symbol of genealogical research. You see it everywhere. The topic is listed. Okay, before you start your research, it's really helpful to take a little time to get organized. That was something that we definitely didn't do, and it does complicate things a little bit, especially when you're trying to find something. But anyway, you'll need 3-ring binders, notebooks, folders, and it's really helpful to keep a correspondence log. And a research log will help you stay focused on what you're trying to find. Photograph albums are also quite useful too. All right, you definitely need to spend a little time to do your homework. Very first thing is identify what you already know. Start with yourself and work backward. That's where everybody has to begin. But the third point there, review has already been done by others. That can save you a lot of time, because more than likely somebody has researched at least one branch of your family tree somewhere along the way. You need to identify your specific questions, and it's helpful to actually write out a simple research plan to keep your research focused and on track. Focus on one goal. Well, when you're first starting, you're going to be, it's a little hard to do, but with the proliferation of information available on online these days, you can quickly become overwhelmed by all the information. So it generally is advisable to try to focus on one thing at a time. And for many surnames, there's upwards to 5 or 6 different various surname spellings. So it's really helpful to get a handle on that before you go too far into your research, or you might realize that you overlooked some information along the way that pertain to your family. You definitely need to interview your relatives as soon as you can in the early stages of your research. It's generally best to make an appointment rather than just show up unannounced. Prepare a specific list of questions so you don't forget any important things. Be sure to take accurate notes, and you can tape record the session too. My father did that on several occasions. But as always, when you come upon new information, you need to verify the information against what you already know, and then update your files accordingly. So social networking can be very beneficial, especially with how simple it is to make connection on various websites. There's a local genealogical club in Omaha called the Greater Omaha Genealogical Society, and they're quite active. I don't think the one here in Plattsmouth is meeting on a regular basis these days. Message boards are something, of course, that wasn't available when we started. I mean, the internet was a distant dream in 1978. But the old Roots Web site has basically been incorporated into Ancestry. GenForm is another message board. To give you an example how beneficial networking can be, a month or so ago when I was preparing for this talk, I made contact with a gentleman on Nabble, which I'd never heard of before. And to make a long story short, he ended up doing several days of research in the German Lutheran church records for me, free of charge. So it generally doesn't work out quite that well. It's that fast, but it just shows you how beneficial it can be to post some queries and answer. And family documents, that's another source of information that you don't want to overlook. Family Bibles, birth and marriage certificates, school report cards, letters, journals, diaries, scrapbooks, newspaper clippings. It seems like years ago people would keep a collection of those clippings somewhere. Of course, nowadays it's so much easier to come upon information from the newspapers because so many of them have been digitized and are readily available on various platforms. And the last point is probably the most important. You always need to take just a little bit of time to document your sources, because you'll sooner or later you'll come upon some incorrect information, especially online, and you need to only way to verify whether it's accurate or not is to look at those original sources yourself. So make sure you take a little bit of time to write down a citation or where you found the information. This is a copy of a Bible record from one of my third grade uncles, George Stream. These can be really helpful, but of course they're very, very hard to find. And that brings us up to family group sheets and pedigree charts. I'll pass around one copy of each. You can have a look, because I can see the digital copy isn't very clear. But this is one of the best ways you can organize your data and track your progress. Just have a look at those. There's specific spaces on there for the family members and the associated dates, for birth, marriage, and death, and where they live and all that kind of thing. It just makes things a lot easier to have it all on one sheet of paper for each family. Okay, once you've exhausted your immediate family sources of information, it's time to start researching some of the records here in the States. Probably the best place to start is on the FamilySearch.org website. That's the genealogical branch of the Mormon Church. You can either go to Catalog and search by place, surname, title, author, or subject, or you can zoom right in to the county level on the Research Wiki. And that's where most people are going to go to anyways, right to the county level. I wish I could have showed a screenshot of that stuff, but there's no way to do it on this program. There's a website called Cindy's List. It's been around ever since the late 1990s. She has over 320,000 links to various genealogical websites. And that's a really good place to get some ideas as to where to go to find various information. And then, of course, there's the county courthouse. Just about every county has one, and that's where you'll find vital information on birth, death and marriage, and wills and probate and land records and all those kinds of things. That's of course a picture that I took not too long ago of the courthouse just down the street. This is a digital copy of a death certificate. I think every state is required to maintain civil registration of birth and death. But for Cass County, let's see, there's a marriage license there. Okay, here we go. Usually you need to go to the clerk and recorder's office at your local county courthouse. Civil registration of birth and death records in Cass County started in 1904, but the marriage records go all the way back to the time of county creation, 1855. In addition to courthouses, historical societies, like this one here, can be a wealth of information. The State Historical Society has a research room over there. I haven't actually been to it, but they do have quite a lot of information pertaining to family research. And a limited amount, I noticed, was available online. It's just one more place where you can obtain some information. Public libraries sometimes are good. If you have time to travel out to Utah, you could definitely make some progress on your research at the Family History Library at Temple Square. The Mormons have been, they started way back in the 1940s with microfilming records across this country and Europe too. And of course now the big emphasis is on digitizing those microfilm records, and of course a lot of the information they have it has been digitized and is available at the Family Search website, but a lot of things haven't been. So if you get a chance, it's well worth the trip. And in Cass County, there's apparently three histories have been written. Andreas's was the first in 1882, and I think Margot has a copy of it in the back room. Dr. Child produced his history a few years later, and then the local newspaper here published the history of Cass County back in 1989, and those can have a lot of good information, especially on the old pioneer families. Census records are among the most beneficial records you'll come across. The federal population census schedule started in 1790, but it wasn't until 1850 that individual family members were actually named, listed by name. So, and of course those are taken every 10 years. The latest one that's available is 1950, and those digital copies of all those are available at the archives.gov, which is the National Archives. And at the state level, here in Nebraska, there's Margot has on microfilm. She has copies of the earliest censuses from 1854 up through 1870, and then there was a special census in 1885. And I think, yeah, those are also available from Family Search and Ancestry. For those of you whose ancestry goes into the United Kingdom, the British government maintains a website there, which gives you access to their census records between 1841 and 1921. This is a copy of a 1850 federal census schedule from Chester County, Pennsylvania. You can see there on the left-hand side, you got the family members listed by name, and then next to that is their age and their gender and their race, and then they're in the middle of the form. It lists their profession or occupation, and then to the right of that there's a column for value of real estate, if they owned any, and then just to the right of that is a place of birth, and I think the other ones have to do with enrollment in school. I'm not sure what the other thing was. But the 1850 census is one of the most beneficial censuses you'll find because of the fact that the family members were identified by name. This is a picture of my third great grandparents' tombstone over in Ely, just south of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Gravestones and cemeteries. You'll definitely be spending some time with these records. One of the first things, if you have a chance to visit, especially the larger cemeteries, you'll want to find out, you'll want to determine if section files are available. Sometimes those can save you a lot of time. And there's at least 4 different sources of information on this, starting right here. Cass County Historic Site has, I think, 45 cemeteries on, is that on microfilm? I think she has.
No, it's on the computer.
Okay. Okay, NebraskaGravestones.org is another great source. Findagrave.com has been around for 30 years. There's over 265 million memorials posted on there. And some of those will even include copies of the obituaries. And Billion Graves, I think, is a fee-based subscription site. It has quite a lot of the cemetery information on it too. All this is a picture out in Northern Virginia on the trip that our family took back in August of '78. This is a church that was started in 1765 in an area known as the German settlement, and that's where my fifth great grandfather settled way back in the 1780s. There's a picture taken that very same day when we discovered my fourth great grandfather's grave from 1827. And this is a copy of a graves registration card. I think it was my dad obtained this from the National Archives. They have a few graves, some information on graves, but more of their information pertains to military and immigration and naturalization from the National Archives. Wills and probate can be really helpful. Probate records are legal documents that are created after the death of the testator. In Cass County, I believe the county judge has custody of these records. Estate files and inventories can be very valuable sources of family information. This is a copy of my third great grandfather's will that he filed 17 days before his death. I don't recommend waiting that long before you file your will. Okay, now from time to time, you need to sit down and review what you've already learned. And ask yourself several questions. Does the latest data agree with my previous research? It's really interesting when you come upon some information later on, and it's almost like a light bulb comes on in your mind, and you'll suddenly realize that well, like I say here, a new discovery will suddenly make sense of something you were unable to understand before, because there's so many missing puzzle pieces when you start. It's really hard to get to put it all together. The more you learn as time goes on, the more the new information will sometimes make sense. You should ask yourself, where should I focus your research, and who should I contact? There's always more research to be done. Newspapers and obituaries. Let's see. The museum here has quite a collection on microfilm of various newspapers from Cass County, and we've got an obituary card file. There must be over 8,000 names in that thing. We just started to digitize that several weeks ago. Chronicling America is administered by the Library of Congress. It's a free website. Has incredible hundreds, probably thousands of different newspapers have been digitized. There's a digital archive free of charge on this Cass County, Nebraska advantage-preservation.com. That's a really good source. The newspapers Legacy and Genealogy Bank are fee-based subscription services for I think around $10 or $12 a month. You can research till your eyes bug out. And but one thing to be mindful of with obituaries, errors are very common. It all depends on how much the informant knew. So sometimes it's all 100% accurate. Other times it can lead you all kinds of different directions. And then of course back to find a grave. That's one of the sites that you'll definitely be spending time with. Now, back in 1962, the Social Security Administration started this Master Death Index of birth, claim, and death dates from 1935, when it began, until February 2014. There's a digital copy of all these available on Family Search. But unfortunately, due to legislation designed to reduce identity theft, it's not likely the government's going to extend that beyond 2014. But there's a lot of information in that Master Death Index file. Military service records, should not be overlooked. There's just a ton of information on the National Archives, from the Revolution era all the way down through Vietnam. You can see the various wars that are listed there at the bottom. The National Personnel Records Center in St. Louis has maintained service records for over 100 years, but unfortunately there was a devastating fire in July of 1973, and over 17 million Army and Air Force service records were destroyed. They tried to reconstruct a lot of that data in years since, but of course that's long before anything was digitized. So it's really unfortunate that they lost all those records. Ancestry, the Fold 3 is basically the portion of Ancestry's website that maintains all these military records. And you'll find draft registration, service records, bounty land warrant applications, enlistment, pension files, discharge records. I've got a couple of examples here that I can pass around. The first one here is just an enlistment record. And these other two are bounty land warrant. A bounty land was a parcel of land that the government would give would grant the soldier for his military service. And I don't think the program was in operation all that many years, but that was one way that the soldiers were rewarded for their service. That's a copy of a pension file from James Messenger's stream for service in the Spanish-American War. That brings us down to land and property records. Like I said before, the deeds are generally found within the recorder's office. You'll definitely want to keep your eye open for various county maps. Some of the maps, like the atlas that was done in 1918 for Cass County, it shows the ownership from each township. And I think my next slide actually shows the one for 8 Mile Grove Township. There was an index gazetteer that was produced in 1890 and 1911 that has a lot of this similar information, which is indexed. And I think that's available at the State Historical Society. Homestead Act, dates back 1862, and those records. There's a digital copy of those records from 1863 to 1908 on the Ancestry.com website, but you can go to the National Archives for anything for the original records after 1908, and You can even contact the Homestead National Historical Park over near Beatrice, because they still have their original case files from day one, and according to what I saw on their website, you can actually go on there and request that information with a Form 84. There's that digital copy from that 1818 atlas showing 8 Mile Grove. I think it's the next township west of here. Immigration, naturalization. So sooner or later, your research will take you back to an immigrant ancestor. More than likely came from the United Kingdom or Germany. The National Archives is probably there's actually several excellent sites that I listed here, none of which are comprehensive. But a fellow with a PhD in electrical engineering named Steve Morse put together as comprehensive list of immigration and naturalization back in, I think, 2001, and it's probably as good as any you'll find. There's passenger lists available on this researchguides.net immigration index, and then the Philby brothers put together a passenger immigration list index many years ago. And then for immigration into New York, you can go right to the Ellis Island website. Their records start in 1892. But for those of you with German ancestors, your best single source is a work that Strasburger and Hinke updated from Professor Rupp back in the 1930s, called Pennsylvania German Pioneers. This is for German immigration before 1800, and you can find a digital copy of that book on Family Search. Determining the place of origin. This can be one of the bigger challenges you'll come across. For some it'll be surprisingly easy, and for others it'll seem almost impossible. But these are various records where you might find the specific place where your ancestor originated from. Birth, marriage, death records, church records, passenger manifests, naturalization, newspaper articles, biographical sketches and county histories, even probate records. In my case, it was an obscure reference to an application that a half-brother of my fifth great-grandfather posted in 1785 that led to our identifying our place of origin in central Germany just 2 years ago. I'll spare you all the details. It would take about 15 minutes to tell you the whole story. But don't overlook probate records. Sometimes they'll reveal the birthplace or the place of origin for your ancestor. Church and parish registers typically will show baptism / christening, burial, communion, sometimes, always marriage, and sometimes there will be membership rolls. For the United Kingdom, the findmypast.com website is probably the single best source. And for Germany, there's two websites there. One, the Archeon, is for the Lutheran church records, and I think it costs you around $20 a month for access to the. There's like 175,000 church records that have been digitized, and of course the work goes on every day. And then for Catholic church records in Germany, you can go to a free site called Matricula, online. Every now and then you need to, like I said before, to take a few moments and re-review all the information that you've collected, and then ask a few more questions. Do the facts agree, or are they in conflict? Sometimes they can be really confusing. It's just like sometimes it's like an investigative cold case. It's really hard to tell who's right and who's not. And then false assumptions, that can lead you down rabbit trails and side trails that you'll later regret, because it takes a lot of time to track all this stuff down. But then you need to consider, are there other records you need to search, and where do I need to go to find them? This is a list of the major database platforms with specific reference to genealogical research. Well, I shouldn't say that. The Internet Archive is the most comprehensive collection on the planet. But there is some information on there that could be useful. Ancestry.com and Family Search are the two most common websites for research. Like I said before, Family Search is free of charge. Ancestry, I think, charges $25 or $30 a month. But they, as you can see, they've already digitized over 30 billion historical records. So it's just mind-boggling. Find My Past is a really good source of information for the United Kingdom. I don't have any familiarity with MyHeritage. There's another website called Heritage Quest Research Library, and that's free of charge. You can go to most any public library to gain access to the internet on there, with specific reference to family history. And then there again, Find the Grave with the grave memorials. There's quite a number of software programs that you can consider once you've got quite a lot of information collected. You'll want to organize it as best you can, and it's not that difficult to with any amount of computer savvy to transfer the information you put on the family group sheets onto software programs. For Macintosh, I just listed a few of the most common. Family Tree Maker, my dad used Reunion and Ancestral Quest, and then for Windows users, there's Brothers Keeper, Roots Magic, and the one I'm familiar with, Legacy Family Tree. But there's another half dozen programs that are probably just as useful. All right, hopefully we've got time for questions.
I don't have a question, but I wanted to make sure that people understand you've given us a lot of information. I saw people trying to keep up with their notes. This will be on YouTube. We're recording it right now. And if you go to the Cass County Historical website, there's a link, and it's under Oral Histories, and that will lead you to the YouTube where we have all of our programs. So it'll be a place where you can slow it down and write down what you need for these resources.
Excellent.
Yeah, get a few of them.
Yes, sir.
Did you run across any issues from the two world wars in trying to find the German information? Towns that no longer exist, countries, borders have changed,
No,
records destroyed.
No, I didn't have any experience with that at all. No, yes, ma'am?
I'd like to say, I've looked into on the computer a lot about my family history. The most information I got was family search, the Mormon church, because I would start putting things in, because they want to know your family's history, and I started putting in my grandfather's, and something would pop up, they gave me more without me even asking. So I got most of my information there.
Yeah, you just can't go wrong
The
on
primary,
family
you know, the
search.
primary stuff to start with. So it would just pop up. I mean, I just put stuff in and they keep giving me stuff without asking. So I really like that site.
Yeah, like I said, that's certainly the best place to start on your online research.
Yes.
So,
I've looked everywhere. I did the Find Your Grave too. And I've done a lot of the ones that you mentioned. But the one I liked the most was the Mormon church.
yeah, and it's pretty easy on the pocketbook.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It's free.
One thing to say is, you mentioned you have to double check, because, you know, anything that they are looking at, AI is coming in and it's going out and searching, and it may not be correct, because the person that put it in the first time, even as they type, we know how we type.
Yeah,
One click of a date off, and you may be a 14, 15, or 16 for a birth date or a death date. Even our cemetery records, sometimes, those poor stone chiselers only, they could be off a date, and, you know, you find them there.
yeah,
So 2 or 3 sources is better than none. And as you said, do your sources.
yeah,
But what I've changed on computers, and from one computer to another, and upgraded my digital files, they dumped all my sources. I lost every source I had.
oh, no.
No.
And they just, you know, and it was like, great. I did not physically I have all the records in file cabinets, but I have not gone back and added every one of them again.
Yeah, that can take a lot of time.
It was just like, oh, well, I know that they were there.
Yeah, whenever possible, it's always advisable to verify information that you find online with original sources. You know, I mean, many instances that just won't be possible. But when you do have that opportunity, that's because the source, more than likely, the source record is going to be accurate.
And another thing, the Cass County that did all microfilm all of their marriage records, they missed 2 pages.
Oh no!
And was one of them that I was looking for. So
Yeah,
it took us time and hunting for the original book, but they had it. And they were willing to help. But we had to, you know, take time and work with them for a time period, you know, to get the record.
yeah. Most mistakes are unintentional. You know,
Yeah.
a fat finger, typographical, or you forget to photocopy something or digitize it.
So there are a few little mistakes in wherever you're going,
That's right.
but time and patience work.
That's right.
And thanking the people that you're working with does a lot.
That's right. Any other questions?
I've run into a snag trying to find where my father's surname came from. When he was born, he had course, his mother's surname. And then sometime 40 years later, it changed when he and my mother got together. And I don't know where that name came from. And I have looked and looked and looked, and I don't know where. At the time, he lived in Kansas and Nebraska. And I can't see like where a legal transcription was ever made. And I mean, they owned a home. He had owned a home previously. All I can think of is maybe some records in Nebraska were destroyed at some point, or I just don't know where else to look. I just want to know how my maiden name came to be, you know, from him. It's strange.
Yeah, that's a really hard one there.
That is.
Yeah, and another thing, what this lady was saying about AI, I belonged to Ancestry for about 10 years. And of course have all my kids' names in there and everything. My name's Patricia, my daughter's name is just Trisha. And about 2 months ago, I got a notification from Ancestry, some new information, and it was an AI search that said that she and I were sisters.
Oh, no.
I kept looking at that, and then up in the little left-hand corner, it said this was AI generated, and I was like, oh, gee.
I hate that stupid AI.
Yeah.
I hate it.
And then,
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
and another member of my family, her father's name was Jean. Her nephew's name is Gino, just with an O. Everything was put in correctly, and it came back that Gino was his father's father. So you gotta be really careful with that AI stuff, that you don't
Right.
just take it and enter it into your search. So, yeah.
Do you know if there are any orphan train records?
Oh,
Do you know the orphan trains from New York City?
yeah.
I'm not familiar with that at
Oh.
all.
And I don't know what year it was, but they gathered up orphans in New York City and put them on a train, and they came out here and worked for farmers and so on. And I have a friend whose grandfather was on that orphan train, and they've often wondered how they could research that. Even if that was his real name, they don't know. Yes, it's the orphan train.
There's probably a newspaper article or two.
Oh, there are books, there are lots of
Yeah.
things about orphan train.
There's
But
an
to-
orphan train museum in Concordia, Kansas, and they have records.
They have
That would be the
orphan train
place to go.
records?
This I found online from an ancestor in Iowa. I found him, said he was, had come on an orphan train, and kind of through his history. But it focused on him, but it's.
Yes, it's hard to go beyond the person that you knew.
Yeah, because they didn't have good records when they loaded those children.
What's gonna happen from here forward where we're not publishing obituaries? We have no local paper? Where do you see things going? Nursing, or not nursing, but funeral home is gonna be our primary location?
Well, Margot's probably the better person to ask on
Yeah,
that.
now the funeral homes are the only place now, yeah.
Well, the courthouse would have records, wouldn't they?
Oh, with
Not
the death certificates.
Not necessarily.
If death certificates are filed, they always need to.
It's very, you're right.
Geez, you've given us a wealth of information, so many sources. I greatly appreciate your extensive